Growing up, I watched a lot of cartoons, and a solid chunk of those were obviously Nicktoons, though I didn't watch as many of them as most people. I stuck to SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, and the Fairly OddParents. I've made plenty of videos about SpongeBob games, and even looked at the first Jimmy Neutron game, so today I'll be diving into a game based on my other childhood Nicktoon, the Fairly OddParents Shadow Showdown. Fairly OddParents Break Into Rules came out first, but I'm more interested in giving the latter a try. This game was one of my most wanted games when I was younger. The Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies game had a trailer for it, and I used to watch that thing constantly and just wish I could play it, but I never got my chance growing up. Recently, I was finally able to live that childhood dream of mine and play this game, and wow, it's actually really good. So, the premise is pretty straightforward, and that's not really a bad thing. Timmy tries to watch the season finale of Crash Nebula, but his TV stops working, and when he wishes for Cosmo and Wanda to fix it, they're unable to because their wands aren't working. They head to Fairy World to see what's gone wrong, and they find out the Royal Jewel, which is the source of all their magic, was stolen, so Timmy and his fairies begin their search to find who took it and restore everyone's magic. A little later, they decide to make a Fairyversary muffin because it's the only thing that can overpower the magic of the jewel, which is in the wrong hands and being used to take over the world, so they've got to hunt down the ingredients to bake the muffin and stop the evildoer. That's pretty much it for the main story, but each level has its own side goal that's accomplished along with the main goal, like foiling Vicky's evil plan to take over the world while collecting the Mooncalf milk and saving Cincinnati from H2 Olga while collecting the Phoenix egg. Each level is treated like a mini episode of the show, and I love it. They've all got a smaller story within, still connect to the bigger story, and come complete with a title card. It's awesome. The game really feels like a Fairly OddParents video game should. Every character has their proper voice, each actor does an excellent job, and the writing is incredibly solid and isn't far off from the show. And visually, it looks pretty good. For a licensed game in 2004, it looks great, and considering these are 2D characters in the show, they did a pretty good job of making them into 3D models. It could have been much worse. The worlds are relatively nice to look at too, but they aren't the worlds we've seen in the show. You don't explore the Turner house or go to the elementary school. Most of the locations are new to this game. Not all of them, but a solid chunk of them. That being said, they don't feel like they don't fit in with the show, they're just not common locations we've seen, so don't go in expecting it to be like Battle for Bikini Bottom and allow you to explore the worlds of the show, because it just doesn't. This game isn't very focused on exploration or collecting anyways. Sure, there's a little of each, but I consider this game a puzzle platformer. In each area, you collect 3 wish stars, and then Timmy makes a wish for some new ability that allows you to progress further in a level. These wish stars don't require much searching around though. They're usually right out in the open and present you a small challenge to collect it, which works well. Once you have an ability, it's yours to keep for the rest of the level, but once you complete the level, you lose that ability, which sounds like a bad thing, but it allows each level to offer tons of unique, ability-specific challenges. Each level has fresh mechanics, and the design of each area utilizes these things flawlessly. I'm very surprised by how polished a lot of these mechanics are for being used only a couple times. It's astonishing. The amount of effort that went into each of these abilities is genuinely impressive, and the work really pays off, as they allow each level to offer something new without feeling like these new things are just cheaply put together one-time use mechanics. They feel like they were made with the intention of being used as the core mechanic. They all feel like that. The only thing that kinda bothers me is that you can't equip them at the same time. You have to hold the L trigger and change what you want to use, which is just kind of annoying sometimes. For some of the abilities it makes sense, but having to pause the game to select what you want isn't ideal. An effective solution would be to move these things to the L and R triggers to kinda rotate through the abilities. It would be much more efficient and wouldn't halt the game so much. They could even say which button would change it to what depending on the ability you have at the moment. It would be so simple. Now I know the R trigger already has a function, it makes Cosmo and Wanda talk to you, but it's pointless. I've rarely done this. Nothing they say helps at all. This could be moved to the Z button and I wouldn't care at all. Sometimes the solution to a puzzle is straightforward and having to pause the game to change your ability seems like a waste of time, and this would work great. But other times there's actually some difficult puzzles that require some thinking and they feel very satisfying to solve. For a kids game it's pretty surprising, but I'm all for it. So, if the puzzles are great, what about the other part of the game? The platforming? Well, it's just okay. At first I despised it, but as you play you start to get a feel for it and it's solid. The shadows cooperate, you have a double jump, and nothing really feels broken. It functions fine, it just doesn't feel as good as it could've. And trying to do things quickly is a chore. I appreciate that there's a run button, but you hold X and he winds up, then sprints forward. He doesn't stop running until you let go of the button or he runs out of stamina. Yeah, he has a stamina meter, which is stupid small at the beginning of the game, but after upgrading it's okay. I really don't get why running is handled like this. When some of the worlds are relatively large, it's annoying when your only way to speed up is to charge forward. It's a struggle to control where you're going, and it's a shame. The worst part of this game is undoubtedly fighting enemies. Pressing B makes Timmy dive like he's in Mario Sunshine, but you can't do this continually to get around faster, so it's kinda pointless. When you jump and press B, you do a ground pound-esque move, and that works okay, but is way less than ideal for dealing with a lot of enemies. It can be so frustrating. A positive that goes along with this is the fact that there's no life system, which is incredibly really necessary for taking out a lot of dudes. There's some 4-leaf clover thing in the corner of the screen, and I think that has something to do with health, but I really don't know how it works, and considering how many times I died without getting a game over, it's safe to say there's no life system. Hold up, after reading the manual, it turns out that yes, there's no life system, but these clovers replenish your health, and when you collect enough for a full clover, you gain a hit point. Just thought I'd throw that out there. It's so unnecessary though. Checkpoints are pretty frequent, which is a good thing, and none of the bosses regain health after you die, so dying has no consequence at all. In some places it actually helps, which is kinda broken. Some levels have you climbing things, and if you fall you've got to redo earlier sections to get back up, but if you die you respawn close to the top, so if you fall down and survive you might as well go jump off the edge. It encourages you to die. And when you fall, survive, and trigger an earlier checkpoint, you just sit there for a second and think to yourself,
too bad that didn't kill me.
this is kind of a nitpick. It can be pretty annoying to have to redo things, but for the most part, it's generous with allowing you to start back up at a reasonable spot. Anyways, I wanted to mention the boss fights in this game, which are all over the place in quality, but two in particular were atrocious. First, the fight with the Jester, which suffers from the problem I mentioned earlier with the enemy waves, but what makes it worse is how easy the fight should be. You hit this button until you get the right suit, then use it to hit the Jester. It's stupid easy in concept, but all these elves are so annoying and make it incredibly difficult to do. It's really bad. And the final boss is also notably terrible. Like, you hit the buttons a couple times and then ground pound on his foot. Do that 4 times and the fight is done. There's these annoying shadow elves that make things a bit more difficult, but not in a good way. It's really disappointing and overall a bad ending to the game, but the rest were okay. My favorite was probably the one against H2 Olga. It's just a tough platforming section. They all have a pretty similar structure and are probably the most lacking part of this game, and what makes it worse is that there's one at the end of every level and none of them utilize the wishes as much as I'd have hoped. I mean, they do a little, but it barely adds anything. Oh, the game has multiplayer too, but it's really lame. You and a friend fly through the air and shoot down as many things as you can. That's it. It's boring and we couldn't push through one round. Okay, I know the latter half of this video has been quite harsh to the game, but most of the complaints don't take away from the overall experience. Half the boss fights are bad, but they're easy and take no more than 5 minutes. The platforming, while not great, works very well and supplements the puzzle-solving elements of the game very nicely. The mechanics of all the different wishes and problem-solving situations they present are taken full advantage of and make for some superb level design. Like, honestly, it's really good. While there's some smaller problems with the gameplay, they hardly lower the experience and you'll eventually get used to them. I really like this game. If you're a big fan of the Fairly OddParents, it's a no-brainer. Play this, but even if you aren't, the game offers such a unique experience and variety of mechanics that I'd say it's still worth checking out. Compared to some of the other licensed games I've made videos about, I'd say it's better than The Simpsons Road Rage, but not as good as the SpongeBob movie game. It's not a masterpiece, but it's a great game that I recommend you give a try. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, leave a like, and if you want to see more and help the channel grow, you should definitely subscribe so you never miss another video. Thank you. If you played this game, let me know in the comments what you thought of it, and if you want to see me do a video on the Fairly OddParents breaking the rules, also let me know and I'll consider that. If you've got any feedback or recommendations for me, as always, drop those down in the comments too. I take everything you guys say into consideration. Thank you. Thanks again for watching everyone, I'll catch you in the next one.